Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, September the 15th, 2023. A couple of days ago, I put out a video concerning the 2024 presidential election on November the 5th, 2024. I looked at the horoscope for the election. I also considered some of the main candidates, specifically Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris. Now, at the moment, Kamala Harris is obviously not a candidate. She's except for the vice presidency, but she is a heartbeat away from the White House because she is vice president. And so, if anything goes wrong with Joe Biden, if he dies or is incapacitated, she's going to take over. So it would be wrong not to consider Kamala Harris. And so what I wanted to do in this video is just focus on one of those candidates, namely Joe Biden, and consider some of the reasons why he might get elected and some of the reasons why he might not get elected. And then in the meantime, as I was looking through the internet, as one does, I kept seeing these references to Joe Biden being corrupt. Now, I must emphasize this is an astrological YouTube channel. It's not a political channel, so I'm just trying to be neutral. I'm just relaying the information as I see it. Now, as far as the corruption allegation is concerned, a lot of it stems around the fact that I believe in April 2014, Hunter Biden, who's Joe Biden's son, joined the board of Burisma, which is a Ukrainian energy company. And the question is, why did he join the board? Remember, he was being paid, I think, around $1 million a year for this. So what was that about? What was Burisma trying to achieve by appointing Hunter Biden to the board? This was 2014. Remember, this was when his father, Joe Biden, was vice president. That's a useful connection. And so perhaps Burisma were using Hunter Biden, to exert influence on Washington. And there was a lot going on regarding the prosecutor general in Ukraine who was investigating Burisma. And I think Burisma wanted this man to go. They wanted him to be sacked. And the question is, did Hunter Biden put some pressure on his father? I believe that in the end, Joe Biden made the removal of the prosecutor general as a condition for a loan guarantee for Ukraine. So what Joe Biden's enemies are suggesting is that he, as a result of pressure from his son, got rid of the prosecutor general, told Ukraine to get rid of him. And that's indeed what happened, and that's not looking good. That's really bad optics. Joe Biden shouldn't really have been in a position where his son was on the board of Burisma. Sure, his son can do what he likes, but really they wouldn't have paid him $1 million just for his expertise on running an energy company. Just bring in some American lawyer for some random reason. I don't think so. And so this idea that Joe Biden is corrupt is not without ground. It's not without grounds. And so this raises a question from an astrological point of view. What makes for a corrupt horoscope? How do you see corruption in a chart? I don't know. Maybe it's just simple. Maybe it's the fact that Joe Biden's a Scorpio. And that's something I want to explore. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Friday, September the 15th, 2023. So here is the chart for today. There's Joe Biden on the right, top right. And here's the chart. So what's actually going on? Well, the moon is in the process of moving from Virgo to Libra. This changeover happens at around 6:45 in the evening in London. 1844. So if you're in the Americas and you're on the East Coast in New York, that means that around 1:45 in the afternoon, the moon will make the sign change. At around 10:45 in the morning, if you're on the West Coast, California, Washington State, that's when the sign change happens. So the movement from Virgo to Libra is quite important. It's a time when the rather difficult energies of the new moon are starting to dissipate. It's when the sun and the moon are in different signs. That's a time when we can start to take the initiative. Right when the new moon has happened, when the moon is conjunct the sun in the same sign, that can be difficult. So when the moon moves out of the sign the sun is in, that's when we can really start taking advantage of the new moon, and we can start new beginnings as the moon starts to get larger in the sky, because at the moment it's invisible. But soon enough, we'll see the thin sliver of the moon as the moon waxes, and so it's a kind of new beginning, and it's a time when we can start taking initiative and start new projects. Now, some of the main aspects. The moon is trine Uranus. Certainly until it changes sign. So Moon Uranus, this is quite exciting, quite dramatic. We can make things happen on a material level. If we might have a sudden idea that we can push forward. So that's really it as far as it goes. I would make one point about this new moon, is that it's on the United States' Neptune. Let me just show you what I mean. Here's the United States. You can see that the Neptune is at 2245. 2245 Virgo. And so going back to the new moon, the sun is at 2234 Virgo. The new moon, which was sort of earlier in the day, was right on moon's Neptune, on the United States Neptune. So Neptune is a point of confusion, and I think this new moon might actually be very confusing for the United States. I should have really talked about all this stuff yesterday when I was talking about the broad concepts of the new moon. But I do think it needs to be mentioned that America again may be encouraged to make mistakes. The people in government are not really thinking clearly. And I think this new moon is going to make matters a lot worse. So that's the main theme for today. There's going to be a changeover. If you're in Europe, then this evening you'll see the moon moving from Virgo to Libra. I think that's going to make things a lot easier. People won't be quite so nitpicking. We can be more relaxed. We can sort of be sociable. We don't have to get obsessed about material details so much. And if you're in America, then from pretty much, well, it depends exactly where you are, but New York, afternoon, evening, you've got the moon in Libra. If you're on the West Coast, you've pretty much got all day with the moon in Libra. So it kind of depends where you are. If you're in Australasia, Australia, New Zealand, no, the moon goes into Libra tomorrow. So that's the positions of the planets today. And now I want to do my forecasts, my 12-sign forecasts. Here we go. So these are my forecasts for Friday, September the 15th, 2023. Aries. It's a good day to focus on your well-being. There are probably things you can do to make yourself healthier and fitter, and you should perhaps consider what you're eating and what you're not eating. And don't forget exercise. Also, Aries pet owners might find that their favourite animal requires more attention than usual. Taurus. Don't be self-conscious. Do what feels right, and in a creative sense, don't be afraid of embarrassing yourself. After all, you have to start somewhere. But why should you embarrass yourself? With the right preparations and good attention to detail, you'll have no problems showing off your many talents. Gemini. Mercury, your ruler, is now stationary direct. It's a real relief. Over the last few weeks, you might have felt that you weren't making much progress, that in some areas you might have been losing ground. You can now start moving forward. Though, to begin with, take it slowly and begin your progress in a secure and protected environment. Cancer. It's a time when you have to be careful. There are lots of things you want to do, but in practice it might be difficult to get much done because you're distracted, even dazzled by outside events that you're not fully in control of. And you might find that financial concerns take up too much of your time. Leo. When it comes to money, you need to be a good listener. People have different views, and you must let them have their say. Then you'll be in a better position to make your own decisions, remembering that now is a good time to be putting your financial affairs on a secure footing. Elsewhere, you can do something surprising that might appear slightly out of character. Virgo. You've perhaps felt that you weren't firing on all cylinders and that overall things should have worked out better. This might have been because Mercury was retrograde. But now Mercury is moving in the right direction and things are returning to normal. In general, it will become easier to communicate and there will be fewer misunderstandings. Libra. The moon is starting to move into your star sign. This, coupled with the fact that Mercury is starting to move forward, should make things a lot easier for you. It'll be easier to get things done and you're likely to get more attention. Also, you'll have a better understanding of other people and their unique psychology. Scorpio. In some respects, you feel like disengaging. Dealing with the outside world has perhaps been exhausting, and you now want a break. But just because you're stepping back from the fray doesn't mean that you're cutting your ties. Instead, you're giving yourself a different view, and over the next few weeks, there could be important changes in your social life. Sagittarius. The overall atmosphere is more decisive than it has been of late. Everyone is much clearer about what they want, and at work there'll be less confusion. So from your point of view, it makes things much simpler. And maybe someone is ready to make a decision. Also at work, you know what is important, and you know what can wait until later. Capricorn. You have a new sense of meaning. It mightn't be spectacular, but it's a guiding light. And once you have the inspiration, you can start to ground it. And as the day progresses, you can concentrate on a single goal. Matters are helped by the fact that you'll be taken seriously and that your social skills will be a major bonus. Aquarius. It's good to get the difficult stuff out of the way. It's messy, but it is also foundational. Getting to the absolute bottom of things. You can move from the depths to the heights, breathing fresh air rather than drowning in stagnant water. And if you can change the scene just for a day or two, so much the better. Pisces. You do understand that no Piscean is an island, and that you, more than anyone else, will be influenced by what is going on around you. This needn't be a bad thing. Now that other people are more forthcoming, you can learn some interesting things, and in the process, relationships can greatly improve. So what I'm going to do now, as always, is I'm going to switch to the I Ching, and I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 32, which is duration. It's about seeing things through. It's not about giving up. It's about having a course of action and just following it through. Not necessarily in a dramatic way. Indeed, it's probably best for it not to be dramatic. You just need to keep moving, keep working away at it. And one of the lines on duration, the second line, it actually moves. So with this moving line, what the I Ching says is that, we've got our character and we're very determined. We really want to see it through to the end. But our actual material resources are not sufficient to guarantee success. So what do we do? Now, you might think that the answer is to accept that we haven't got what it takes and then to give up. But the I Ching says no. The I Ching says we have to carry on, even if we haven't got the resources we need. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. I mean, the I Ching is quite sensible. It won't tell us to do anything stupid. It won't advise us to do anything stupid. So it's saying we haven't got what it takes to achieve our goals, but we must nonetheless keep working. So is the I Ching is the I Ching kind of setting us up for failure? I don't think it is, what it's doing is it is telling us that because of the times we're in, we just can't give up on things. We need to be prepared to work on things, even if at the beginning we just do not have the resources to be successful. And maybe the assumption there is that if we keep working on something for long enough, those resources, which to begin with we don't have, will eventually start to crystallize. And this will allow us to see things through to a successful completion. Now, duration does switch, or rather it transitions. And it transitions to hexagram 62, which is preponderance of the small. So what we're being told here is just not to be greedy, not to be impatient. We just need to slowly focus on our goals, one step at a time. Don't have big ambitions. Be satisfied with small results. Because really, we haven't got the resources to see everything through and, in one. It's going to have to be lots of incremental changes. And so take it one step at a time and don't be overambitious. And in the end, we'll reach our destination. Okay, so now I want to look at Joe Biden. And I want to consider why he might be corrupt. Now, I'm not saying he is corrupt. I'm just saying what in his horoscope might potentially make him corrupt. So let's see. Here is his chart. And so I said that maybe it's because he's a Scorpio. Now, that might sound to you like a ridiculous generalization. But then I had this thought. Who was the last US president before Joe Biden to be a Scorpio? Who was the last Scorpio US president before him? Well, the president before Joe Biden was Donald Trump, and he was a Gemini, and before him was Obama, and Obama was a Leo, and before him was George Bush Jr. He was a Cancer, and before him was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a Leo. Before him, it was George Bush Jr.'s father, obviously George Bush Sr., who was a Gemini. Before him, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was an Aquarius. We're not finding any Scorpios here. So we're going to have to kind of go back a bit further. Before Ronald Reagan was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter was a Libran. Before Jimmy Carter was Gerald Ford, another Cancer. Before Gerald Ford would be Nixon. Nixon, was he a Scorpio? No, he was a Capricorn. Then before Nixon, Lyndon B. Johnson. People say a lot of bad stuff about Lyndon B. Johnson. People do suggest that Lyndon B. Johnson might have been corrupt. But no, he was a Virgo. Before Lyndon B. Johnson, John F. Kennedy, certainly not corrupt, Gemini. Then before him, Eisenhower. Some say Eisenhower wasn't he one of the best post-war American presidents? He was the one who criticized the military-industrial complex. Now, with the Ukraine and all this, we can see the military-industrial complex is still in full force. We're being destroyed by the military-industrial complex. It's still there, in spite of Eisenhower's warnings. And yeah, he certainly wasn't a Scorpio. He was a Libran. Before him was Truman. and Truman was a Taurus. And before him was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Aquarius. Before him, Herbert Hoover. He was president during a Great Depression, during the Wall Street crash. He was a Leo. Before him, Calvin Coolidge, Cancer. Before him was Warren Harding. Now, Warren Harding, he has the reputation for being one of the most corrupt American presidents. The White House under his presidency was riven with corruption. I mean, the biggest corruption scandal under Warren Harding was the Teapot Dome scandal, where the government had access to these oil wells in Wyoming, and they were making them available to private companies and individuals, but there were kickbacks, there were bribes, someone went to prison, and I don't know if Warren Harding himself was corrupt, whether he was taking his kickbacks, but it was a really corrupt administration. And Warren Harding was born on November the 2nd, 1865. So before Joe Biden, the previous Scorpio president was Warren Harding. And in a way, Warren Harding and Joe Biden's horoscopes are actually quite similar. So let me show you. There's Joe Biden's chart. You can see that stuff in Scorpio. He's got 4 planets in Scorpio: Mars, Mercury, Sun, Venus. Here is Warren Harding's chart, November the 2nd, 1865. Warren Harding also had 4 planets in Scorpio: Saturn, Sun, Mars, Mercury. So there's a kind of a similarity there. Notice also that Warren Harding had the moon in very early Taurus, opposition Saturn, but he had moon in early Taurus. Joe Biden, moon in early Taurus. So there's this weird similarity, isn't there, between Joe Biden and Warren Harding. So how do I justify associating Scorpio with corruption? And by the way, if you're a Scorpio, I don't feel that I'm kind of singling you out. Not every Scorpio president is corrupt. If you look at the horoscope of, I believe the Scorpio president before that was Teddy Roosevelt. He was a Scorpio, and he was an anti-corruption campaigner. He was famous for his campaigns against corruption. The thing about Theodore Roosevelt's chart is that it's kind of different. Just the very shape of it is different. Let me just show you what I mean. Here's Theodore Roosevelt's chart. He was a Scorpio, but he only had Sun and Mercury in Scorpio. He certainly didn't have the moon in Taurus. So Roosevelt did not have that intense concentration of Scorpio that Warren Harding and Joe Biden have. So I'm certainly not saying that all Scorpios are corrupt. I'm just saying that certain Scorpios might be corrupt, and I'm trying to work out why. And with Warren Harding, he seemed to surround himself with sort of cronies, and in the White House there was this group called the Ohio Gang. I think Warren Harding was from Ohio, and he brought all these people in from Ohio, and he felt comfortable with them, I think. He was loyal to them. And I think, Scorpio is a very loyal sign. And so he associated himself with people he felt comfortable with, and they asked him to do stuff. And he did it. He didn't want to upset them. They were his friends. So that may be why Warren Harding got so involved with corruption. And of course, when he died, he died, in mid-term. He didn't complete his term. Everyone thought in America thought Warren Harding was wonderful. And it was only afterwards they realized how corrupt his administration was. But it may be the same thing with Joe Biden. Maybe he's not kind of directly corrupt, but it's his son. It's his son. His son, is on the board of Burisma, and his son asks him to do stuff, and he tolerates his son being in this position in the same way that Warren Harding tolerated the Ohio gang in the White House, because Scorpios are incredibly loyal to people like family and their close friends. It's a great thing about Scorpios, and they'll do anything for them. But in the case of Joe Biden and Warren Harding, it may just be the case that's intensity of Scorpio. Both Warren Harding and Joe Biden having those 4 planets in Scorpios. Having 4 planets in Scorpio. That's might be what it did for them. Because I think this thing with Joe Biden and Burisma and what was going on in Ukraine, I think it's really serious. I know the sort of Democrat press is saying, no, it's nothing. But I think it is something. I think the Republicans are onto something here. So that's my theory about Scorpio. I think that there is a connection between Warren Harding and Joe Biden. And it's also the fact they both have Moon in Taurus. I'm not quite sure what that is about, but I think it's... They're looking for some kind of they're looking for maybe some kind of stability, grounding, and it's those people around them, the loyalty. That's what they need. They want to be grounded in what they are, in where they are. And so, Biden, his family is particularly important to him with that Moon in Taurus. And so he'll do anything for them. And maybe that was what was happening with Hunter Biden. He's standing by his son through thick and thin, and it's causing a lot of trouble. Now, I haven't really answered the question about whether or not he's going to get re-elected. Now, that's not a question I'm not actually going to answer directly here, but I need to look at some of the reasons why he might get elected, why he might not get elected. Now, if you want to find a good reason why he might get elected, history is again on his side. If you think about it, Joe Biden was elected president in 2020, and around 2020, there was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction has a 20-year cycle. So every 20 years, there's a Jupiter-Saturn cycle. There's a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And so that means there would have been a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction around approximately the year 2000. There'd be a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction around 1980, 1960, 1940, 1920, 1900, 1880. So every 20 years. And so if you're elected at the time of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is about a new cycle, a new beginning. And so you're getting elected on a new cycle. And so that means that when you stand for re-election, or indeed when your party stands for re-election, you're in that same cycle. So you've got a good chance of getting re-elected. If not personally, then at least your party has got a good chance of winning again. Now, I know there's an incumbent effect in America, where if you're the incumbent, you always have the advantage. But if you actually look at these elections on the cycle, you think about it. 2020, okay, that's when Biden got elected. 2000, George Bush Jr. got elected. He won again in 2004. 1980, Ronald Reagan got elected. He won again in 1984. 1960, John F. Kennedy got elected. His running mate, Lyndon B. Johnson, won in 64. 1940, Franklin Delano Roosevelt won in 1940, won in 1944. 1920, well, that was when Warren Harding won, but he died before the election. But Calvin Coolidge, who was also a Republican, won in 2024. And so you go back to 1900. I can't remember the names precisely, but again, I think same party won in 1900. 1880 breaks the pattern. In 1880, Garfield, who was a Republican, won, and then Grover Cleveland, who was a Democrat, won 4 years later. So the 1880 election was the one that broke it. Then you go back to 1860, and of course Abraham Lincoln won in 1860, and he also won in 1864. So on that basis, and maybe it's connected not just with the incumbent effect, but with the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, you could say that things might be looking pretty good for Joe Biden. But what if, this is just an idea, what if the curse reasserts itself? You know, the curse is like, the curse is when, if you're elected on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, around the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, you die in office. And that's quite it was quite a long-standing thing. It always worked until Reagan broke the curse. Reagan was elected in 1980, and of course he should have died, but he didn't. He was shot, but he was okay. And then George Bush Jr. again, he also managed to survive his term. And so Joe Biden he's Joe Biden elected in 2020. So this is the critical year. So maybe Joe Biden will die in office, and he won't escape the curse like Ronald Reagan and George Bush Jr. You know, I'm being flippant here. I think the curse has been broken, and I don't think the curse is coming back, by the way. But I'm just pointing it out. It's a kind of, if you like, a bit of fun. Now, as far as more substantial things are concerned, I already looked at Joe Biden's chart and how it relates to the election in 2024. Here's the chart. I mean, I showed you this chart 2 days ago. But what I did was I pointed out that Mercury was going to be crossing Joe Biden's ascendant. Now, I've set this chart for November the 5th, 2024, but I've set it for about 10 p.m. Eastern time. In other words, the kind of time where the results are probably coming in. Because we know, when does an election start? When does an election end? With people are able to postal ballots and all this kind of stuff, it's really difficult to know what the precise timings are. So what is going on at that precise moment when we're starting to get an idea about who's won and who's lost. So Mercury is crossing his ascendant. That's good, but Mercury is opposition his Uranus, which may not be quite so good. That there could be a certain sense of shock, although that Mercury is moving away from his Uranus. And I should say this assumes that he gets to standing in the presidential election, that he really is the Democrat nominee. Another thing is Mars. Mars is at 0 degrees 39 Leo. In other words, Mars is going to be exactly square his moon. Now, Mars square moon, I wouldn't have said that was a good aspect to have when you're waiting for an election result. It's quite an angry aspect. And if one's trying to speculate on his state of mind, it wouldn't be good. So maybe Mars square moon is a sign of someone who has just found out that they've lost an election. So yeah, that is a possibility. Okay, so I now want to move to his solar arc directions, and in terms of his solar arc directions, this is when we move his planets 1 degree every for every year that he's been born. So when we move his planets, that'll be 82 degrees. Each one is moved 82 degrees. So here are his solar arc directions. Move everything 1 degree, and we put them on the wheel. So inside is Joe Biden's horoscope. Outside is the other planets for the solar arc directions. And we see that solar arc directed Saturn is at 316 Virgo. In other words, solar arc directed Saturn is exactly square his ascendant, and it's square his Uranus. And at the same time, transiting Mercury will also be on his ascendant. And I think that solar arc directed Saturn in that position, I don't think it's very good. Now, okay, I know some people might say, oh, but it's, Saturn is all about responsibility. Saturn is showing he's gonna be re-elected. I'm not sure I'd say that. I think Saturn is about a realization that things aren't working. That this is bad news rather than good news. So I think that Saturn squaring his ascendant is a piece of evidence suggesting that he might not win. Again, I'm not making a forecast here. What I'm just trying to do is trying to look at what's going on astrologically and just trying to look at the pros and cons of saying why he, whether or not he's going to be elected. Another thing to consider is his profections. So if we go back to his horoscope, his profected ascendant, his yearly ruler. So he will have his birthday prior to the election takes place in November 2023. So he will be, let's get this and make sure I get it right. He will be 81 years old. So if we do one sign for a year, so this would be when he's 70, when he's in years divisible by 12, that's the ascendant, so 72. So we move 6 signs on: 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. Then we move, that's 6 signs to 78, 79, 80, 81. So it is Virgo, and so his year ruler would be Mercury, and his year, and this is after his birthday in November. So his year ruler suddenly becomes Mercury. So we might want to consider in what kind of condition is Biden's Mercury. Biden's Mercury is actually not in great position, is not in a great condition, because it's conjunct the Sun, it's combust. It's also besieged. You can see that it's got Sun and Mars either side of it. If you see the Sun as a malefic and the Mars as a malefic, maybe I'm too influenced by Indian astrology, but I would see the Sun as being a malefic there, and his Mercury to have a besieged feel to it. And he's got Mercury in the 12th house. Hidden enemies, all this kind of stuff. So his Mercury is in poor condition. And to have Mercury as your year ruler is not great. Also, during the election, Saturn will be moving through Pisces. Transiting Saturn will be through Pisces, so it's going to be making an opposition to Virgo. So again, I don't think that's great, and I think by looking at it in terms of annual perfections, that doesn't really give you a very good picture. And finally, there's of course his solar return, and I've already looked at his solar return, and as you know, I regard his solar return for 2023 as being a dreadful chart. Solar returns can be quite hit and miss, but this solar return is uniquely bad. I would say not uniquely bad, but look at the condition of the Sun. He's got Sun conjunct Mars. He's got Uranus opposition with Sun and Mars, and he's got the Moon on the Mars-Uranus midpoint, and so it's a really terrible chart, his solar return, and that chart. To me, it doesn't just suggest that he's going to be losing the election in 2024. That makes me think, is he really going to be standing? And look at Saturn. I mean, Saturn is at 0 degrees 44 Pisces. Just to finish up with his natal chart. Saturn is going to be on his south node. It's going to be opposition his north node. Saturn is going to be square his Uranus. So Saturn is causing a lot of trouble there, and so that isn't great. And he's still, at the moment, he's got Saturn squaring his ascendant. So just there's a lot of bad stuff going on in Joe Biden's horoscope, which does make me wonder whether he's going to be able to make it to actually stand at the end of 2024. But I'm not making a prediction yet. I'm just pointing out the pros and cons. I don't see much in favor of Joe Biden winning the 2024 election. But, to say that he's going to lose, let's say he's up against Trump, you then have to look at what's going on in Trump's horoscope. And with Trump has his own problems. So, it might be a question as who's got the worst chart in that election, Trump or Biden, assuming that Biden and Trump are both standing. But maybe it just doesn't come down to horoscopes. It comes down to something else. As I said a couple of days ago, you cannot You can't forecast an election just by looking at a horoscope. I don't believe that's possible, because as I said a couple of days ago, if that were to be the case, you could just choose candidates with good charts. And I just don't think it can work like that. Anyway, that's enough on Joe Biden. If you've got this far, thank you for listening. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.